Chapter 6. What was my mother like when I was a child? When asked that question, several feelings came into play. My mother could be compared to the four seasons: the freshness of spring, the warmth of summer, the beauty of fall, and the coziness of winter. She would she would wake us with a song and put us to bed with a story. She always came up with some stories, and they were always exciting. And she had dogs and horses in them, and I remember she even used inanimate objects. She wrote about a penny that was lost and found in the gutter, and it made it to this hand and that hand. She was terrific in making stuff up. And then she even did one about a sword that was held by a hero, and then when he fell, a villain picked it up, and how he used the sword, and the sword ended up in the Louvre Museum. I mean, she was so smart. She was the product of a Catholic school education, and she could take a sentence and break it down to a hanging participle, whatever the hell that is. And she did it with my brother, and she tried it with me. I didn't understand a word she said. She went eventually when she was a kid. In high school, she went on to business school, and she knew Craig at Pittman shorthand, and she tried to teach me. Forget about it. Forget about it. I'm going to learn shorthand. But she was such a warm woman, and but she didn't want to play with her because she never hit us. But if she was not happy with what you were doing, you got a mouthful that you wanted her to hit you. She put so much guilt on you. I heard so many stories about. She would tell me, "Oh, you put me in my grave. Don't come to my grave. Don't cry there because you put me there." I mean, she had these million stories, and my brother and I were not easy to bring up because we wrestled every day, every day. And you got to understand, my brother turned out, he was like 6'3", 240. I'm 5'8", 140. And we'd be wrestling, and my mother would say, "Robert, leave your brother alone." What? My brother had a way. He used to hold his hand over my mouth and nose and wait till I'm about to die, and he'd pull his hand over. He said, "Ooh, that was brutal." Well, no, I was growing up, and I remember one time we were having a rock fight, me and my best friend, and he scaled one right into my eye. Now I'm bleeding like crazy. So, I gotta show my mother. So I run up, my hand, and the blood's coming out, and she's backing up, closing doors. What happened? She thought I lost an eye. So after a while, she cleaned it, and she saw it was just a cut in the eye. But after that, I used to make up things, injuries, to get her reaction. But what a wonderful woman. So loving. And I think between my father and my mother, that's where I get how I feel about family, because of how they were. And I miss them both. And I remember my mother, who was on her deathbed, basically at the hospital. She had kidney failure. There was an infection, they couldn't fix it. And my father picked up her hand and says, "Lee, you got to pull through. You got to see your grandkids and all that baloney about you got to see your grandkids get married and all that." And she pulled pulled her hand away because she didn't like people, you know, she didn't like being in that position where people had to, depending on people to do stuff for her. So she turned away, and that day she died. She died at her own accord. She died, that's the time. She had enough. And you know what? I miss her, but I know how she felt. She didn't want to end up being in the hospitals and stuff. She didn't, that wasn't her. And when she, I remember how she handled our health problems, oh, which were few, very few. You know why it was few? She didn't make it like, oh, no, no. If you were home from school, which was rare, she didn't make it a happy thing. She made you feel guilty. What the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be at school. And even though she was very comforting, give you your juice and all that baloney, and if you had any chance of constipation, she started off with the Phenamint, X-Lax, milk of magnesia, and what was the last thing? Oh, never would we ever get citrate of magnesia. That was only for my father. But she had the other thing. You know what it was. After those three things didn't work, it was the old enema. You had the enema. And I never forget it. That's why we got healthy in a minute. You never want to get to that point. She would put me over her knee, and if you remember how it worked, my brother, 6'3", would hold it as high as he could, and that, whatever that soapy water was, would go right through you in 2 seconds. And she said, it's getting the poison out. That was the way. And you know what? We saw the doctor very, very rarely. I remember one time, it was like a miracle. I was doubled up in pain. I had some kind of stomach virus. I was doubled up in pain. And she says, just gas, just gas, just gas. I couldn't. Finally, she relented because I was bent over. She called the doctor who actually came to the house. And he gave me a shot of penicillin. You know, 2 seconds I was better. 2 seconds. Because we never took medication. So when you got it, it worked. But that was, and she had another way of doing it. You know how she knew you were better? You'd be sick, right? And she'd start cooking meatballs. And you say, hey, Ma, can I have a meatball? That's it, you're better. Out. She had that way. Yeah. But, you know, she's a typical, I guess, Italian mother. That's how they felt about their kids. And I was happy that those were my parents. I mean, I couldn't be, I wouldn't want to trade with anyone. So anyway, I guess that's it. But I'm going to talk about them later on in the other chapters. But this is basically when I was young and what I remember about my father and mother. But we'll talk about them later. See ya. Oh, wait. Chapter 6.